F1's back and forth title fight took another twist before the summer break, while big performance swings jumbled the pecking order behind McLaren. So here's everything we learned at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc was understandably disappointed to lose his best chance to finally win an F1 race in 2025 to a mysterious Ferrari problem. After the race, Leclerc was quick to retract his massive in-race frustration as he claimed he mistakenly believed his pace slump was down to Ferrari making a front wing setup change in a pit stop. Instead, it was a separate issue that Ferrari claimed it didn't fully understand. It started costing Leclerc in every single corner and lost him 2 seconds per lap, meaning he slid from first to fourth. Leclerc called it his one opportunity to win a race this year, and he isn't optimistic that he'll get this chance again in the second half of the season. But maybe that depends on how much progress Ferrari's actually made of late, and whether the issue that cost him in Hungary was a freak one-off or something fundamental, like a recurrence of the plank management problem that recent updates were meant to solve. Team boss Fred Vasseur believes nobody should draw conclusions from Leclerc's disastrous final stint. He pointed to Leclerc's pole in Hungary and podium at the previous race at Spa as evidence that the upgraded Ferrari is much improved, while rival McLaren team boss Andrea Stella said Ferrari will be a contender for victories for the remainder of the season. You can see why, given Ferrari nearly beat both McLarens in a straight fight, something that would have been unthinkable for most of this year so far. Sauber's astonishing revival continued at the Hungaroring, with Gabriel Bortoleto finishing a career best 6th. The Brazilian's outstanding performance played a big part in that, but so too did a decision Sauber made on Friday. Bortoleto struggled badly in the first 2 practice sessions, describing himself as zero comfortable in the car. The team decided to bust the Friday night curfew, allowing operational personnel to work beyond 10 PM. Every team can do this twice a season, and Sauber's decision to play its first joker in Hungary allowed it to work on reliability problems and fix balance issues. Bortoleto himself stayed late to ensure he was there to thank his car crew when they finally finished. He also rewarded their effort with a strong weekend, reaching Q3, setting the 7th fastest time and not putting a foot wrong on his way to 6th in the race. Along the way, he held firm early on under pressure from Max Verstappen and chased mentor Fernando Alonso to bag his 3rd points finish in 4 Grand Prix. Red Bull knew it was vulnerable heading to the Hungaroring, as its bias of medium speed turns were perfectly suited for McLaren. But the team and its lead driver Max Verstappen had no idea just how hard it was going to be for them. Red Bull endured a performance low point of the season, as Max Verstappen never realistically looked like challenging for the podium, qualified 8th and finished 9th. His team boss Laurent Mekies acknowledged that there was nowhere it was a match for the benchmark McLarens, as Red Bull's drivers felt a lack of grip in slow and medium speed corners all event long and had no idea why that was the case. And in an interesting admission about where the performance stacked up against McLaren, Mekies offered a quite brutal assessment, saying that where it's killing us on most tracks is the medium speed corners. Lando Norris called his 5th win of the season, which trimmed the gap to Oscar Piastri to just 9 points, his first victory where doing a completely alternate strategy to most, giving myself that opportunity, worked out. It came a week after another strategy variation, taking hards at Spa instead of mediums like Piastri had the lap before had not made a difference. But this revealed something interesting, that McLaren doesn't just permit strategic deviation, it actually encourages it. McLaren basically thinks Piastri can't complain because the one-stop had been discussed pre-race, so it was on the table for both drivers, and Norris wasn't sneakily given an option that surprised Piastri. Plus, the 2-stop was considered clearly the preferred strategy. Piastri just got unlucky with how the race played out. Norris was able to take the gamble because he had a poor first corner and was on the back foot, then did a good job as fortune swung his way. There is no divine right to win in F1 just because you've qualified ahead of your teammate or emerged from the first corner in front, unless the team specifically sets that policy. But McLaren's commitment to strategic freedom could become a significant variable over the remainder of this title fight. As Piastri said, when you're the car behind, your risk-reward ratio is always much different. A first Mercedes podium in 4 races can be partly explained by a development U-turn it made ahead of the Hungary weekend. Mercedes dropped the suspension it introduced at Imola earlier in the summer for the 2nd time this season, having already parked it for Monaco and Spain before it returned to aid Mercedes' Montreal victory. The teams basically realised that the new suspension creates more problems than it solves, so in the words of team boss Toto Wolff, the upgrade's going in the bin. That helps George Russell finish 3rd in Hungary, but it's also good news for rookie Kimi Antonelli, who is facing a confidence crisis with 6 non-scores in 7 races and struggling to consistently push the car to its limit. The old suspension went a long way to restoring his confidence in Hungary, even though the result of 15th in qualifying due to a track limits deletion and a monster stint to pull off an ambitious one stop to finish 10th in the race doesn't fully show it. This is the W16 he and Russell will have for the rest of the season, with no more upgrades planned. That at least guarantees the bin suspension will be the last development mistake of a bruising ground effect era for Mercedes. From being slowest of everyone at Spa to best of the rest and enjoying its best weekend of the season a week later, Aston Martin enjoyed a hell of a turnaround in Hungary that it doesn't fully understand. Fernando Alonso converted 5th on the grid into the same place in the race, backed up by teammate Lance Stroll in 7th. Alonso called it a nice surprise, but admits the concerning thing is we don't know why. The Hungaroring definitely suits the AMR25 better, as Aston Martin's cars are always relatively stronger when everybody has to run higher wings. But the uncertainty isn't that Aston was better here, it's why it was so much better, as this wasn't just in keeping with its strong pre-Spa form, it was a new peak. There was another revision to the front wing in Hungary, but as Alonso said, if that gave Aston Martin this much performance, that's very good news, but I think that has to be understood. Yuki Tsunoda spent the whole Hungary weekend closer to Max Verstappen's pace than ever before, and was even quicker than him for the first time in a practice session on Friday. But it became totally irrelevant as Tsunoda matched his worst result for Red Bull with 17th. Red Bull's nightmare weekend meant Tsunoda was eliminated early in Q1 despite being just a tenth and a half slower than Verstappen. That led to another pit lane start for a strategic engine change to have more options for the rest of the year, and a long afternoon at the back stuck in traffic, which was made worse by picking up damage. As Verstappen barely managed to score a couple of points himself, this was hardly a disgrace from Tsunoda, and Red Bull opted to ignore the race result entirely and focus on his speed. Team boss Laurent Mekies called it a very strong sample, maybe his best so far, while Tsunoda himself felt boosted by his progress and was proud of his performance despite the result. Hungary marked a new extreme for Lewis Hamilton, as the contrast in results with Ferrari teammate Charles Leclerc left him clearly struggling to accept his situation. Having failed to get through to Q3 by just 0.015 seconds and then seeing Leclerc grab pole position, Hamilton's miserable post-qualifying assessment included a dramatic claim that Ferrari probably needs to change drivers. And on Sunday night, after failing to make much progress in the race with an offset strategy, he didn't seem any happier. It's quite common for Hamilton to let his emotions swing as results fluctuate, but this weekend his demeanour was worse than he'd even been when he was struggling so much at Mercedes last year. The Ferrari move was meant to give Hamilton a new lease of life and started with such optimism. So when Hamilton feels himself suffering what feel like the same mistakes and qualifying disappointments as before, he slips into saying he's useless and that it's all his fault alarmingly quickly, even if these lows are more infrequent than he makes out. Williams had a bad weekend in Hungary, failing to score points with nearest rivals Sauber, Racing Bulls and Aston Martin all closing the gap in the championship again. That leaves Alex Albon, who finished 15th, fearing a rearguard action to defend 5th in the Constructors' Championship. While the recent aerodynamic upgrade at Silverstone has boosted Williams' performance again, the car is still weak in high downforce trim thanks to balance struggles. As Albon says, it's going to be one of those years of Williams trying to hold on for the rest of the season. James Vowles confirmed at the Hungaroring that there are no more upgrades coming for after the summer break. Given the importance of next year's major rules overhaul for Williams, he's not concerned even if Williams does lose ground. With an 18-point advantage over nearest rival Sauber and just a week after finishing 5th at Spa, Williams is in a good position, but not an impregnable one. You had to feel for Franco Colapinto in Hungary. He finally outqualified Pierre Gasly and put together a solid performance, even sneaking into Q2 at a track Alpine's car was hopelessly uncompetitive. But that was as good as it got. Colapinto beat Gasly thanks to his teammate's 10-second penalty, although he shouldn't have needed it. He had a bad first lap running wide at turn 2, but in his words, there were mistakes everywhere from Alpine and himself. The messiest part of his day was 2 long pit stops, so Alpine screwed up more than Colapinto did. It's a shame that he's signed off a very tough run in the car with a weak result, because the last couple of weekends have been a bit better, and this one was his strongest in terms of pace relative to Gasly, although his driving in the race needs to be tidier. Colapinto saw the positive that I did find some performance, it just counted for nothing because of Alpine.